I'm still kicking myself. A few years ago, I wanted a new theme. I didn't even need it. I just wanted a new theme for my website. I don't know, I got bored, and I know I'm not the only one who does this. And before I knew it, I had wasted 2 or 3 days looking for the perfect theme for my AdSense and display ad websites. I found one, and then I spent another day or two putting it on the site, making all the changes, and at the end of the day, I didn't improve really anything. But what I've learned over the years, publishing websites where I monetize with AdSense and various display ads, is that there are certain things that really seem to work best when choosing a WordPress theme. It really comes down to layout, design features, and various features of the theme. And in this video, I want to set those out. Now, I'm also going to make a couple of suggestions for the themes based on what I've used and what I'm using now. But really, there are a lot of themes out there that are really, really good for AdSense websites. First up, short headers. It drives me crazy when I go to a website, and when I first arrive there, all I see is a huge logo and then a huge menu, and I don't see the title of the post. I may see a little bit of an image, and then I got to scroll down, and then, oh yeah, there's the title, and then further down there's a featured image, and then, oh, okay, now I'm into the content. And as a user experience, it's not that good. But worse up, I just sit there and think about how much revenue from ads that they're missing out on. Those above the fold ads are really valuable. And so when I'm looking for a theme, one of the first things I look for is that the header does not take up a lot of space. Now, yeah, you got to have a logo on there, and you want to have a menu at the top, but it doesn't have to take up half the screen. So look for a WordPress theme that offers a really short header. Tip number 2 might not seem like a big deal, but it is, and I've tested it. Now, some themes will actually put the featured image above the title. And other themes, I would say most of them, put the featured image below the title. Which one's best? I like below the title. Unfortunately, most themes do that, but some themes don't. So if you have one where the featured image is above the title, I would make the change. I found that having the title show up right away is really good for user experience, but it also gives better ad opportunities below the title. And those ads perform, for some reason, which I haven't been able to figure out, but who can figure out this stuff anyway, ads below the title tend to perform a lot better than ads above the title. So there you go. Definitely either make the change on your current website if your featured image is above the title, or get a theme where it puts it below. Tip number 3. This relates to the featured image that I just discussed, but in this case, and I can't fault websites for doing this. What they do is they put the huge hero image, the full screen image above the fold. It's the featured image, usually the title superimposed on top. And hey, I like the look of it, and I think it's great for small business websites. But to think about all the lost ad revenue because you don't have an ad above the fold, all you get is an image. It's not really a better user experience. It is a nicer design, but it's really not doing anything for your user experience, and you're missing out on a lot of revenue. So, as much as you may like that, avoid that. Get a theme where the title shows up at the top, you get your featured image in the content column, and get your ad above the fold. Alright, next up, that theme that I ultimately chose a few years ago, where I spent 2 or 3 days looking for, and it wasn't necessary at the time, that theme I ultimately got was one that had 1,000,000 features. Alright, and so not only did I waste time looking for it, I spent a lot of time setting it up. You could pick a different layout for every different archive page. You could pick out a different layout for the home page. You could do different featured image locations, post styling, colors, footer arrangements, everything. You name it, you could customize it. And I ended up spending days doing it. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really make a whole big difference in my experience. And so I avoid themes that come loaded with 1,000,000 different ways to set up, because it takes a long time to set up. I don't want to do it. I prefer to find a theme where I like the design out of the box. I don't have to make a lot of changes. Usually they're very simple. I don't have a lot of customization options, which tells me there's probably less code in the theme than something with 1,000,000 options. And I set it up, and I got a website up and running inside 60 minutes. Now, this is really my personal preference. It's obviously not going to make or break your website to go with something with all the bells and whistles, but my approach is I like to focus on growing websites rather than designing them. Next tip boils down to the age-old debate of how many columns should you have for your website. I've tested it. I've tested 3 columns. I've tested 2. I've tested sidebar on the right, sidebar on the left. I've tested 1 column. And when I say test, I'm referring to which one generates the most ad revenue. Almost all the time, the 2 columns are going to work best. I think visitors are most comfortable with that on desktop, with the content on the left and the sidebar on the right. All right, obviously, this doesn't really pertain to mobile view, but when you're looking at desktop, that's the layout I go with. In some cases, I will use a single column. If it's a really important piece of content, I'll forego some ad revenue, but generally speaking, the default layout that I like for my AdSense websites would be content left, sidebar right. All right, next up when you're looking for a WordPress theme is customer support. Unless you are an expert coder with PHP and CSS, you want and you will need support, because there is nothing more frustrating than something that is broken you're trying to fix, or something you're trying to do that you cannot figure out, you have no help with it, and you really don't want to shell out $125 an hour to some coder at Codable, and so you want a theme with good forum support or ticket support, because it is very frustrating trying to figure it out on your own. You can literally go down a 4-day rabbit hole trying to do some CSS tweak. Avoid that. Just get a theme that comes with good customer support so you can ask the question, get a response within a day or 2. Next theme buying tip is check the demo on your mobile device. Most of us, when we're working on websites or choosing a theme, we tend to be on our desktop, and we like the look of it on our desktop, and we're like, oh great, it's a great theme, it's perfect, I'm going to get it. Take the extra 20 seconds to just check what it looks like on mobile, because these days you're going to have more visitors come to your website on mobile than you are on desktop. So you want to make sure that the mobile looks good, and if it doesn't, you may want to consider to keep looking. All right, next up. You ever visit a website developer or theme developer that said, we have the fastest loading themes? Well, I have. I visited lots of them, so I'm not really sure who to believe. That's why I tend to go with theme developers that have been around a long time. They have sold a lot of licenses, and they're reputable. If they tell me it's the fastest theme on the planet, I don't know, I don't believe them, but as long as it's reasonably fast, that's good enough for me. So I'll mention the 2 themes I use in a few minutes. The other thing you want to consider, though, is the theme is not the be-all and end-all of speed. There's a lot that goes into it, so it's going to boil down to which host you use, what kind of media do you put on your website, do you optimize your media, how much content you have, what plugins you all use. These all go into site speed. So, if you have a slow site, you can't really 100% blame it on the theme unless you're using some free theme that has terrible coding. Generally, if you buy a premium theme from a reputable theme developer, it's reasonably well coded. All right, let's talk about which themes I use. Now, please keep in mind the guidelines I just set out. There are a lot of themes that fit the bill, all right, that check the boxes. But a lot of people just want to have a straight up suggestion, so I'm happy to give it to you. Okay, first up, what I'm using right now on all my sites are themes from my theme shop. I like the look out of them right out of the box. They're very simple. I don't have a ton of things to set up. They load reasonably fast. They're well coded. The customer support is amazing. I mean, I've received such excellent responses in the forum support, CSS suggestions, PHP code suggestions to do different functions. So they're really good in that department, and so that's what I use on all of my websites. In the past, which I've used for years, is StudioPress. They are very reputable. They're sort of the developer's theme company, I guess you could call it, because a lot of website developers use the Genesis framework for building out client websites. Exceptionally well coded, loads very, very quickly. StudioPress definitely has a particular look and feel to them. If you like that, terrific. I mean, you're not going to go wrong. Either of them are going to be excellent, and they're going to check pretty much all of the boxes set out in the criteria I suggested above. But if you don't like either of those, keep looking. There are plenty out there that fit the bill. I want to wrap this up with a few more additional tips about publishing websites with display ads. All right, first off is please do not use the shortcodes that are built into a theme. Okay, now just think it through for a second. All right, if you want to switch themes and you have 200 posts with shortcodes and they're formatting all different boxes and drop caps and whatever else you formatted, tabs, etc., etc. Guess what you got to do when you switch your theme? You got to go reformat all that, strip out all that shortcodes and redo it for 200 posts. That is a complete waste of time. So if you want to make fancy content with the tabs and the fancy boxes and the drop caps, whatever else, use a plugin. Ultimate Shortcodes is a free plugin, I believe. I use that on some sites. I don't do a lot of this fancy formatting, but I can totally understand why you would want to. Another good practice tip, if you publish multiple websites and they all are generally roughly the same content websites, is just use the same theme or the same theme developer for all of them. It really makes a big difference. I used to have all different themes across all my websites, and it took a lot longer to do updates and to make changes. Now, because I use basically the same theme developer, my theme shop on everything, it's really easy. I know the themes inside and out. I can make changes across all the sites very, very quickly, and it's an efficiency thing. Again, if you're publishing a directory website and then you have a regular content blog, obviously those are different, but if it's all the same to you and your sites are pretty much all the same, just put up the same theme, or at least from the same theme developer. It's going to save you a lot of time. That wraps it up. Hopefully it helps you find a perfect WordPress theme for your AdSense site. If you want to learn more, there's a link below. I have a course dedicated solely to monetizing websites with display ads and AdSense. You can check it out below.